live.
Welcome to the Thunder and Lightning Show. Brett, it's been quite a while. I'm glad to have you back on the show.
Good to be here.
It's always nice to have a voice other than myself. I don't
That's
really
what all the
enjoy
fans have
talking.
said. Yes.
I don't really enjoy talking to myself all the time, but anyway, and I'm sure the viewers will appreciate it as well to hear a different voice. Today we want to talk about the obvious news. Benedict has died, and so the first thing is pray for his soul. I mean,
Yeah,
really,
absolutely. Yes.
that's the most important thing if you get anything out of this show. We want to talk about Benedict's legacy. So, Brett, do you have any thoughts on how Benedict will be remembered? Maybe let's say like 100 years from now.
100 years from now, he will be remembered as the Pope who resigned. Now, will that mean he is the Pope who started what would be the current trend of Pope serving X amount of years and then resigning? I mean, will this be the start of that process, or will it just be a one-off? Either way, he'll be remembered as the quitter. To put a negative spin on it, which frankly I have. But yeah, that's what he'll be. All the other stuff, all the large tomes of books that are actually larger than the Bible, but they're about commentary about the Bible and about Christianity. Most of that will mercifully be forgotten, just like most of the theology of the 19th century is in many ways forgotten. Just
Yeah. Well, in the 20th century, I think most of the theology, 10 years or so, will be forgotten. Like, I mean, really, and Benedict was a man of the Council, Vatican II.
Absolutely.
He wore his suit and tie as a priest.
He certainly did.
And it seemed as though throughout the years he got, a little bit more in line with the Catholic faith.
Well, you know what? I was discussing that with my cousin. My cousin John Proctor. He has a blog called Mary, the Destroyer of All Heresies, which I encourage you to check out. And in preparation for the show, I asked him, well, what do you think? Benedict's gone. So what do you think about what he did, about his return to tradition? And this is what he said. The thing to remember about Benedict is that he is a Hegelian philosopher. He follows the philosophy of Friedrich Hegel. Hegel is Mr. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. So, what's the thesis? Traditional Catholicism. What's the antithesis? Why, that would be the Vatican II Church. So, and then what did we get instead? At the end, why we get a synthesis in the brave new world of whatever those two things together. As a matter of fact, he called it mutual enrichment. And that's what he believes in, and that's what he said he believes in. So he doesn't believe in tradition for tradition's sake. He believes that if we don't have tradition to go against the modernity, then we can't move forward to the omega point, to a bold new future. That's what it takes. And that's why, he even said, we need the hermeneutic of continuity, because he believed, and correctly, that the Vatican II Mass and the Vatican II Council was sort of a Frankenstein monster. They just wanted to throw almost all the traditions of the church away and start over in the brave new Pentecost. So to me, that makes a lot of sense, because if he had really loved tradition, what was he doing there with Cardinal Frings at Vatican II, helping to blow things up? I don't know.
Yeah, there are a lot of perspectives.
Yes.
About Pope Benedict. My personal opinion is he was the best pope in the last 50 years.
Well,
I would say. I don't think a lot of people would disagree with that, but I
Okay,
do
because
think
you're comparing him to John the 23rd, Pope Paul the Sixth, John Paul the First, John Paul the Second, and Benedict and Francis. So that's the crew. You're the post Vatican II, the Vatican II popes. So you're saying he's the best Vatican II pope. You might be right.
now I did hear though from I think this was an SSPX podcast where they said, well, actually, I would consider him the worst pope because he quit. And
And so would I.
he did all these good things and then he quit.
Yeah, because he
And
did this crabwise walk back to tradition, but then he threw a startling novelty into, I mean, a real novelty. Oh, I'm going to resign. Not only am I going to resign, I'm going to be the Pope Emeritus. I just made it up, guys.
yeah,
I hope you like it. Yeah, so in that way, yeah, there's much to be said for the society saying, yeah, the worst. And of course, if we didn't have Benedict, we couldn't have Francis. Just doesn't, it just doesn't work any other way.
yeah, really. And if you look at really kind of circling back to the same thing, if Benedict were Pope,
Mm-hmm.
and if he never quit, but he said, I'm going into seclusion for the rest of my life, but I will remain Pope,
Mm-hmm.
we would be in so much of a better spot as a church.
It would have been
Because
awesome.
if he did nothing,
Yeah, exactly.
we'd be so much better off.
And that's the essential job of the Pope, is to do nothing. I mean, he's supposed to preserve the faith. He's not supposed to make it up. Is he supposed to travel around the world having World Youth Day? No. No one cares. It's so funny. They talked about, let me just bring up Francis, just recently said, oh, by the way, I have a secret letter that I will resign in case I'm incapacitated. And apparently this is following the example of Paul VI. So they're all like, got this. It's like, and my response to that is, when did the Vatican get nuclear weapons? Because how you have the president and the vice president and the speaker of the house, and they have the whole line of succession, because it's very important that, the country has someone who can push the button. Does the Vatican have the bomb? I mean, does it matter if the Pope passes away? No. The Pope has passed away 265 times before. We all seem to get along. There have been the sed has been vacant for years at a time, and the church hasn't fallen down yet. So I don't know what that's about. This whole, we must be in charge at all times. But yeah, it's like, do you remember? I don't know if you remember. The Secretary of State under Reagan was Alexander Haig, and Reagan was shot by John Hinckley, who's out, by the way. He's out and he's a new man, but he went to jail for decades and decades. But Alexander Haig went on television. Now, he wasn't the vice president, nor was he the Speaker of the House, but he was the Secretary of State. And he went on and he said, I am in control. Then it would say, no, you're not. And that basically was the end of his political career. It was just insane. I kind of expect like Betchy to do that in case Francis falls down the stairs. I kind of expect him to run to the cameras and say, I am in control. But we'll see.
Well,
but it doesn't matter, because it's the Vatican. It's Catholicism. It isn't going to fall apart if there's some guy sitting in a chair. It just isn't. Not immediately, anyway.
Thanks for joining us on the live stream, everyone. Happy New Year, Patty.
Patty,
So
good to see you.
I think there's one thing we haven't mentioned, and a lot of people, they would probably mention this first. And to me, it's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Okay.
Summorum Pontificum.
Yes, we're for it.
He's going to be remembered as the Pope of Summorum Pontificum.
Is he?
I think he will. I think he will. And if he isn't, that's a shame. I think he should. I think he deserves to be remembered in a very positive light
for
allowing the Latin Mass. So if anyone attends, I don't want to. I think diocesan masses. I think diocesan priests may have been allowed to say the Latin Mass before
Well,
Summorum
they
Pontificum.
were if your bishop allowed you to, and you had to go get a Mother May I, just like we have now. You had to go get a Mother May I from your bishop, and if your bishop didn't like the Latin Mass, you were never saying it. End of story. That's that's how it was.
Yeah. So I mean, if you, depending on when the Mass, if you attend the Latin Mass, depending on when it was established,
Right.
I would say that a large majority of Latin masses were established after Summorum Pontificum.
Absolutely,
So
they
if that's
were.
the mass you attend,
Yeah.
then you have Benedict to thank for that. Now, for me
Yep.
personally, I've told you this, Brett. I have Francis to thank for me attending the Latin Mass.
Right.
But Benedict, the mass that I attend most often, and even some of the other ones that I attend as well, they were established after Summorum Pontificum, and so I wouldn't be able to attend those masses without Summorum Pontificum. So
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
well, okay, so I know that there is an indult mass in Pittsburgh. Cardinal Wuerl allowed an indult mass in Pittsburgh, so it's not like it's not like you didn't have any option. There were options. It's just there weren't great options.
Well, let's say you lived in the Midwest. I don't know
Yeah.
what your option was. I don't know if your option was in Colorado. I don't know what your option was in Montana. I don't know what your option. There was, or North Dakota. I know that I didn't even know that there was such a thing as the Latin Mass until after Summorum Pontificum came out. I never even heard of it. I mean, and I grew up, I was 6 years old in 1969 when the new Mass came, and that was it. And I was an altar boy. My brother, 2 years older than me, he still learned the responses, the Latin responses as an altar server. But I was an altar boy 2 years later, and I wasn't even taught those. So, it just, so I just missed the Latin Mass, basically. And then it was like, we were in the new springtime. It was going to be great. And I never heard of it. And like I said, until Summorum Pontificum. That's the first time I even heard of such a thing, because no one talked about it. It was like, oh yeah, we did that, and that was that. That was then, and now it's over. It's the same Mass, it's like, okay.
Yeah, that was kind of what I got, and I actually didn't really learn about the Latin Mass until a long time after Summorum Pontificum. Maybe I don't know how many years, 3, 4 years. Someone talked about it, and I'm like, oh, what's that? That's what they used to do, and so that was part of my journey home. But and I think a lot of people, Summorum Pontificum, I don't know, it didn't really seem to make a splash in the mainstream church. It was more of like a gradual, the priests. You know that there is a priest who said the Latin Mass, and you're like, oh, well, he's really traditional. He likes some of this old stuff, and I kind of like it, And so I think that it caught on a lot with the priests and the bishops. I think a lot of them were scared. They were like, oh no, what's going to happen?
Well, it's interesting because, of course, it was he promulgated it in 2008, and there had been a lot of history before then. And most of it was written by Marcel Lefebvre, the Archbishop. He had found is basically within a year of the new Mass, he founded the Society of St. Pius X, which was not what it was. It was in full communion with the Catholic Church, And they said, we're going to continue doing this Mass. We're going to continue to train priests in the old Mass and in the old sacraments and in the old ways. And that's what they did. And of course, they kept on getting more and more and more resistance. And then, of course, we came to the end where, they were just waiting for Lefebvre to die so that the society would go away. And because he kept on saying, please let me name bishops so this can continue. And they're like, yeah, we'll get back to you. You dead yet? No.
Well, and Ratzinger actually had a lot of communication with Lefebvre.
Absolutely.
And if you attend an SSPX chapel, you also have Benedict to thank because he
That's
removed the excommunication, which apparently people will say the excommunications were invalid anyway. But Benedict officially removed the excommunications from the bishops,
yes, he did.
paving the
You're
way for
absolutely correct.
paving the way for Francis to grant the SSPX partial faculties,
Well,
which
faculties to
is
marry and faculties to hear confessions. Yes,
yeah. So I mean, a lot of us have a
no,
lot of us have a lot of reasons to thank Pope Benedict.
you're absolutely right. I mean, I
Is
tend
what
to
I'm
be.
saying.
You're right. We got to give credit where the credit is due, and he is Mr. Ecumenism because what is the real goal of ecumenism? Making the world Catholic. So, and how did he go about that? With Angelorum Coetibus, his his other his other motu proprio, where he allowed Anglicans to join the Catholic Church and keep a lot of their ceremonies and rites, as long as they were as long as they were good with the Catholic Church. And now we have all these ordinary parishes. Once again, 100% due to Benedict, and they are,
Yeah,
mhm.
and the Anglican ordinariate masses are generally significantly more reverent than even your reverent Novus Ordos.
Absolutely, because
So
they're kind of, but not really, but they're kind of like the traditional Latin Mass, but in English. They have prayers at the foot of the altar. And the interesting thing for us English-speaking people is that they have their long Anglican tradition of hymns, music, polyphony, prayers, all in the good king or King's English these days. Um, and like I said, we're English speakers, so as long as these things are Catholic, and of course there was a strong strain of Anglicanism that became, that became very close to the Catholic Church, and of course now is part of it. The ordinary basically when they when the clowns came into the Church of England, a lot of people left, and a lot of them became Catholic. Praise God. So once again, that is, to be fair, and that is 100% Benedict.
now with Pope Benedict, you may have seen some headlines about Cardinal Mueller canonizing Benedict. He's not the only one. There were
No,
many who
no.
said, "Oh, Benedict is a doctor of the Church." Oh, really? So you canonized him already, and then uh, let's hold off a little bit.
Yeah, let's hold off a lot.
But will the Vatican hold off?
No, no, no. He is a he's a Vatican II Pope. He's and so we have. I mean, after all, who do we have? We have John the 23rd. We have Saint John the 23rd. We have Saint Paul the Sixth. We have Saint John Paul the First, who was only there for a
Not yet.
couple. Oh, he's not yet. It's only
No,
that.
it's give it a year or two,
Give
and
it a.
yeah.
They'll make up a miracle. He'll be in. John Paul II. He's already there. So who are we missing? Benedict, who just died, and Francis, who hasn't died yet. So yeah, and all good. No, excuse me. All Vatican II popes go to heaven. That's what we have to. We have to keep canonizing the council, and who was a big member. Who was a big member in the council? Benedict. As a matter of fact, we are in the post-Vatican II era, because Francis was not at Vatican II. Benedict was, Morgellita was, and of course Paul and John Paul Paul and John the 23rd were at Vatican II. So he was the last. He was the last Vatican II Pope. We're fresh out now. Bergoglio was in the church, of course, during Vatican II, but he was not at the council.
Now, Pope Benedict XVI, because I kind of went back and forth on this.
Mm-hmm.
He holds positions that the modern church does not support. So Benedict, he was friendly towards the Latin Mass.
Yes.
He opposed LMNOP.
Yes.
He upheld the discipline of celibacy for priests.
Yep. Those were the
And
big things that he was for, or against. Yeah.
and he generally, when it came to like the key like moral issues of today,
Mm-hmm.
he seemed to be supportive of the Catholic Church's position.
Yes.
And so,
I think that's fair.
to me, I thought, well, why would the modern church rush to canonize him? But I also, looking back,
Mm-hmm.
you look at Pope John Paul II. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so as soon as he died, a lot of the conservatives said, "Oh, he's a saint." So they
Yes.
canonized him. The conservatives canonized him immediately.
Pretty Santo Subito. Yes.
So Benedict did not canonize John Paul II. It was Francis who did. But at the
Yeah.
same time,
Yeah.
but
Well, hold
now,
on. Hold on. Now, wait a minute.
okay,
Benedict ran all those people at outside the Vatican, St. Peter's Square. I mean, he was practically there distributing Santo Subito signs. He was very much of the cult of John Paul II, or as he liked to call him, John Paul the Great. Haven't heard that one much the last couple of years, but yeah, John Paul the Great. No, he didn't actually canonize him. I think he would have gotten around to it. And
yeah,
and he's a respectful man. He knew he was too close to Wojolita to actually canonize him. And I think correctly, people would have said, "Yeah, this is a little hinky." But maybe there'll be a McCarrick canonization from Francis. I don't know.
I don't know about that. I think right now, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think he kind of runs a lot of things though. But no, my point is, whenever John Paul II was canonized by Francis, what
Mhm.
other pope was canonized?
Oh, John the 23rd.
John the 23rd at the same time.
Yes,
And
that was this.
so I think this could be a
Ooh.
way for them,
Oh,
if they
so
do
who?
canonize Benedict,
Yes,
to
who are
kind
they
of
going to put
slip in
in?
one of their communist saints and
Helder
canonize
Camera.
them at the same time.
Helder Camera.
So
That's my vote for who goes in with him.
we'll
Because
see what happens.
or well, no, they would never do Pius XII, and I don't think Pius XII is ever going to get canonized by this current crew, no matter how long they're in charge. They're yeah, he's out because he was pre-council. It's like, nah, we've got enough popes with halos. We don't need any more unless they're from Vatican II.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting situation.
It will.
Um, do you have any thoughts on anything we discussed, or do you want to move forward to see like what is next for the Francis Church?
Well, let me just see if I can sum up anything that worth summing up here. Um, as you said before, we need to pray for the soul of Joseph Ratzinger. Um, he he was a man of great contradictions. He is not, and he's not a guy you can count on in the pinch. Um, we discussed this with Ryan, if you remember him, and he talked about how he he's a two-sided man. He's like, well, it's like I was in on. He actually delivered the excommunication to Lefebvre. He was the guy that said, "Oh, by the way, I'm the head of the CDF, and you are out." But then he brought him back in. He brought it. He wrote some Morum Pontificum, but then he wrote it, frankly, so he made up this whole thing like there's the ordinary form and then there's the then there's the extraordinary form. They're really the same exact form, exactly the same. And, that didn't work out. Now, did it? Francis took a sledgehammer to that and said, no, there's only one form. Thank you very much. And it's sad to say that, you've got big brain Francis, German professor, theologian of the 20th century, frankly stumped by a common sense street thug like Bergoglio. No, there's only one right. There's only one Roman right. Sorry, pal. And and what did Benedict do about it? Well, he sat in his room. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you very much. So he believed in it until he didn't. I don't know. I mean, although to give him credit, he did try to escape. When his brother died, he did make it all the way to Germany. He did get to his bedside, but then, of course, they literally dragged him into an ambulance van and put him back in the Vatican where he belonged. So it's all very odd. Everything, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to be this Pope Emeritus, and I'm going to be quiet. Except I'm going to put out a book with Syrah, and I'm going to pop off about every 6 months about things that I are interested in. A man of and who can forget the big one? Pray that I do not flee from the wolves. Oh, by the way, I'm fleeing from the wolves. Bye. Oh, and the crazy stuff. Like, I'm going to get on a helicopter and fly to Castel Gandolfo and say, and close the doors, and I'm done being the Pope. And then I'm going to fly back and live in the garden. And we're going to share a secretary. Both Francis and me will be sharing the same papal secretary, Ganswein. Great. And then he was really quiet, and then he sent out Ganswein to give this crazy speech about how there's going to be two popes, an active pope and a contemplative pope. He's always trying to, he's a guy that wants to have his cake and eat it too. And, he ended up with, in one sense, like I say, he deserves to be well remembered in a lot of ways. But at the end of the day, he was in a room filled with Vatican II priests where they changed the rite of ordination, and he was given not extreme unction, but the anointing of the sick, and that's, was he given the apostolic pardon? We don't know. They didn't say. So he got his Vatican. He worked very hard to get Vatican II, and that's what he got. He got Vatican II sacraments at the end of his life. So God love him, and God protect him, and we can pray for him, and we're moving on. So where does the church go next? That's a good question, John.
Well, before we get to that, I do want to point out the mutual enrichment thing.
No.
We hear about that a lot.
Yeah.
How the mutual enrichment is the Novus Ordo rite will enrich the Latin Mass, and vice versa.
Yeah, the mutual enrichment, the synthesis. Yes.
Yeah, there's no common sense to that, and everyone, I know some of the Benedict fans kind of use that kind of language, and a lot of us were like, it doesn't work.
Like, no, that isn't even arguable. It is a failure. Mutual enrichment is a total failure. And he did all these sorts of weird things. Oh, by the way, Benedict will not have any Latin masses said by the vast majority of Vatican II priests, including almost everyone in the Vatican. They won't say requiem for him. Now, people at the priest at the fraternity and the Society of St. Titus and the Institute of Christ, they will say them. And the other diocesan, who have Latin, they will, when they're allowed, they will hold requiems for him. But there won't be any in the Vatican unless they do that little tiny church that's down underneath St. Peter's that they have once a week like on a Tuesday and there's only room for 12 people. That's the one they have. That's at St. Peter's.
Now, there have been rumors about how Benedict wrote his autobiography or something
Mm-hmm.
that would be released after his death,
Yeah.
and someone has it, and all this
Yeah.
stuff. Ooh, we'll see what really caused him to resign.
No.
I don't think we'll ever hear any reason for anything that he did. I think that's gone. That's gone like the McCarrick files.
Yep, I agree with you 100%, John. It's totally bogus. And you sent me a little story that the fraternity of St. Peter got a letter just recently, just the last couple of months, from Benedict. And they said, yeah, he sent us a letter about Traditionis Custodes. It's like, but they neglected to say what it was about. It's like, and my point to you was, relax, guys, he's dead. We can talk about what he told you because he's no longer here.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I know what it says. As a matter of fact, let me read it to you. Let me read it to you. I was the man on the grassy knoll. He's the guy that shot Kennedy. I figured he was, this is such a secret. I just figured that's what he was talking about. It's crazy. What could be such a big secret? I don't like Francis. Ooh. I think you guys should continue saying the Latin Mass. Ooh. I'm praying for you. Just tell us. Is there some sort of secret? Is there some sort of secret plan? I hope there's a secret plan. One that would work without an actual live Benedict at 95. God bless him. He was. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. It's a secret. Everything's a secret in the Catholic Church, except that which is fairly obvious, like we hate you, Latin Mass people, things like that. No one seems to have a problem saying that.
Well, and that's a good lead into where is the Francis Church going from here?
Well, John, I think you should kick it off because I think you've got some pretty strong ideas about what's going to happen.
All right, so I'm not a prophet. You guys know that. I've been wrong.
No.
I think these next 6 months, we're going to see the Bergoglio agenda fully unleashed.
What?
I think
6 months? At
next
the
6
speed
months.
the Vatican works?
I think that, well, Pope Francis, I think he knows his time is limited. I don't know how limited. Could be a few years, hopefully not.
What do you mean, hopefully not? Hopefully it's very limited. I've said before on the Johnson Thunder show, I hope it's short, really, really short.
Well, that's what I said. I said I hope it's a few, or I said it could be a few years. I hope not.
It could be a few years, yes.
But it's not going to be another decade. It's very unlikely.
Yes.
So, and I think, so when I read the St. Gallen Mafia book, I did a review on that.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that the electors who elected Pope Francis, and even Francis himself, really expected about a 5-year papacy.
Right.
And now it's 10, almost. So, I
guess they expected him to kick off like cardinals are done when they're 80, as being voting cardinals, and so he was going to be about 81, 82, and he should have had the decency to, resign his mortal coil. He could already be a saint. Oh well.
Yeah. So, and the comment here, you mean he's going to take advantage of Benedict's death? Well, yeah. I mean, I guess you can say that. I think he was already planning. So, and let's see here. There was another comment about, yeah. So, well, this isn't quite related, but Bishop Sticca is getting visited by Nestout and Burbage. Guess what? Burbage cracked down on the Latin Mass, and he wasn't seen as a particularly hostile guy to Latin Mass.
Oh
Why did he
no,
do
not
that?
at all, not at all.
And Callahan in Wisconsin cracked down on the Latin Mass just recently.
Has that
It's almost
happened
like,
yet? Has that happened
yeah,
yet? Oh, did it
yeah.
officially
It's
happen?
almost
Because
like these bishops are getting a directive from Rome. Hey, something's coming, and the rumor is in the spring. And so I think that
really,
was already in place to crack down on the Latin Mass.
hmm,
But now, I mean, you see the Pontifical Academy for Death, formerly the Pontifical Academy for Life. They're
right,
ramping up their pro-abortion rhetoric. Um, they're
very much
talking
so.
about what
So's Trump, for that
contraception.
matter.
Hmm?
So's Trump, for that matter. But that's another
Well, yeah,
issue.
but he's
That's another issue for another day.
yeah. I'm forget about him.
Yeah,
He's done. Like I'm done with him. Um, no, but they're talking about contraception, and
right.
it's making its way into different areas of the church. The German bishops just visited the Vatican, and Cardinal Ouellet said, "Oh no, I really don't like the direction you guys are going." Well, guess what, Cardinal Ouellet? They've been talking about that for how many years? Did you say anything 3 years ago? I did. But I'm just a
Oh,
random dude on YouTube.
right. And you know what they said to, and you know they got up and answered him after he gave that presentation. You know what they said? We don't care what you say. We're moving ahead. They, in very polite language, but they said, don't care. We're doing it. The
Yes,
only
and
the only problem they have is the German synodal way meets before the first meeting of the Francis Synod on Synod. So it's like a couple months before. So they really want to try to hold the Germans back until afterwards. Now that will show, if Francis can do that, well, that will show he's still in charge of the church. If he can't, we're talking schism, baby. And like you say, the rush is on, and I don't think Francis wants the Germans. He wants the Germans to help him bring all the gayness and the women as priests into the church, but they're screwing it up. They're screwing it up by they've already got a whole bunch of people. They've warned everybody. Everyone knows it's coming who's paying attention. And like you
well, and you
say,
can
I'm sorry, and you're saying that, without Benedict around to help keep the Germans in line, which of course, they respect him because he was the Pope. Who knows?
thank Benedict for foiling Francis' plans for the deaconesses, deaconettes, whatever you call them,
Deaconettes,
and
deaconettes.
married priests. Married
Yep.
priest, I thought for sure was going to come out of the Amazon Synod, but and did you mention? I think you mentioned it.
Yes.
Benedict
Yes.
co-authored the book with Cardinal
Cardinal Sarah.
Sarah,
Yes.
and I
Exactly
think
right.
that really
It did. It threw up.
Francis really it made him think about things.
Well, it made him think it's like, I don't want to go Pope on Pope. We're all one big happy family here, and that's what he's always sold. Although, honestly, once again, it's that thing. One of those other things we're never going to be able to prove. Did Benedict jump or was he pushed? And of course, I lean heavily towards the pushed. Although he was such a nebbish, he was the man who famously said, "My power ends at that door." And of course, Francis is exactly the opposite. It's like, I am in charge. He's the guy, and no one gets in my way. Even someone as powerful and as devious as Cardinal Becci found out, take a step back. The Francis is in town. So, yeah, I just, it's odd. It's just the whole thing is very odd. But the Germans, they're going full steam ahead. And like I said, can Francis control them enough to help him get his goals, which are make the German church into the single church, into our church, which means, of course, we'll lead, if we become the church of deaconettes and homo priest, well, I for one will be leaving. And you can call
Well,
me
I
a
think
terrible schismatic if you want, but I will be leaving.
yeah, I don't. I think the church will have left us.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw
Yes,
the Babylon Bee
yes,
article today.
that
Yeah,
was
yep,
awesome. Yes, that was
yeah.
awesome of him.
Um,
Yes.
so to recap, I guess to maybe put a more specific target on my predictions. So what are we
Hmm.
going to see in the next 6 months?
Yes.
I don't know. I want to say I don't know. I
Right.
think
Well,
we
we
will
know
see
that,
another.
but what?
I think we will see another Latin mass crackdown.
Ooh, like what? What are they
Um,
going to do? Just go to
well,
individual
I think
bishops?
I, that's hard to tell. I think it's just ban more Latin masses, don't
Okay.
allow the sacraments,
Hmm.
or at least force the Institute and the FSSP
Ah, now
to
you're
maybe
talking.
say to maybe celebrate
Chrism mass.
the Chrism Mass.
Yep, that's the one.
Although if it's after Easter, then they wouldn't have to do that for a year. So they may do something similar to what Supich did. That
What?
may have been the model, and
Oh,
Supich saw, and all the bishops in the entire world saw how the Institute caved to Cardinal
yep.
Supich.
Yes, they did.
And so now you have the precedent that's set, and the Institute's not going to do a darn thing about it.
Oh,
And so
not to mention St. John Cantius. They totally like, oh, we're canceling our Latin Mass this week as per the bishop, and we'll be doing a Novus Ordo only. Sorry.
well, and that's what they chose.
Yeah,
That's mutual enrichment,
yeah,
and you're
yeah.
gonna.
That's true. The St. John Cantius, that's exactly right. That is what they do.
And I mean, I feel bad. I heard about a priest. You may have heard about him as well. He was ordained um, to St. John Cantius after the motu proprio,
Hmm.
Traditionis Custodes, and
Yeah.
he sent his request in to Cardinal Supich to say the Latin Mass, and he was denied.
Mm.
And his first Mass was a Novus Ordo.
Wow.
So that's
Wow.
what you get.
Yeah,
I'm
that's what you
sorry.
signed.
I
That's what
feel
you
bad
signed up for. Yeah, I feel bad too, but
because I mean, you go through it for what, 6 years,
at least.
and then only at the end, on your last year, boom. Oh, sorry, can't say the Latin Mass. Well, that's
Yeah.
kind of what you joined it for.
Well, they believed Benedict. St. John Cantius is a really good example of mutual enrichment, Novus Ordo, Reverent, and the Latin Mass, and that's what they believe in. That's what a lot of diocesan priests believe in. They are creations of Benedict and of Summorum Pontificum, and now they're being told, we changed our minds. I mean, it's not that it's Benedict's fault, but it's like, no, they we're doing something different now, guys. Got to get on board with the new thing, and so it's like they're left without any serious recourse right now. I mean, unless they get desperate and say, oh, I'm leaving. I'm leaving. This part of the church and going to the irregular communion side, and frankly, how many? And I haven't seen any. How many diocesan priests are who've lost their mass are saying, you know what, I've lost my mass. Maybe it's time for me to go to the fraternity or the institute. I'm not seeing any of that happen. So
Well, but
yeah,
think about this though. Does that mean it isn't happening?
we
Because
don't know.
do you think if they lose their Mass and they say,
And
well, I kind of want to take a sabbatical, do you think they're going to publicize? Well, actually, if you're a priest in the Institute or the FSSP,
mhm.
you can't use social media, or at least you're extremely limited.
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, how many priests do you see? I'll answer this question for my. It's not a
Yeah.
question. I don't
Right.
see any FSSP, SSPX, or Institute priests on Twitter. I
Right.
can guarantee you that. Some of the
Okay.
priests run their Facebook pages for their parishes.
Right.
That's it.
Right. Well, that was
So,
like the late the late lamented Father Jackson, who's of course still alive. And caught in the toils of whatever that is about. And I hesitate to speculate, although I have my own opinions about that. I think it's BS, but I'm not willing to go out on a limb and say that. Put my foot down and say that's absolutely true because I don't have any evidence. But it looks bad for Father Jackson. But he
oh
did.
yeah.
But once again, he was a guy that went and did his parish page, and I remember that when he had his parish page, when he had a parish. Yeah. So you're saying it might be happening, but we can't see it yet.
Yeah, we can't see it. We don't know, and
We'll take it
no
on
one's gonna.
faith.
They're not gonna. The priest. Look, if you're a priest and you say, "All right, this is done. I'm going to transfer to the FSSP,"
Yeah.
well, they would need a lot of training. So
Yeah.
they'd have to go through their.
Well, you're talking to a diocesan priest already knows the Latin Mass, so there's
I
of
mean,
course they'll need some training, obviously, because
but they could also be a priest in residence somewhere, and then just so happen, to get reassigned, and they're not going to go and publicize and say, "Hey, look at me." They're going to say, "I'm saying the Latin Mass, I'm serving the people, and guess what? Like I'm just a new priest that showed up at this parish, that was assigned to this parish, and that's just what it is." I mean, I think I don't think there's a lot either. I'll say that, but I don't think there's
I
a
agree.
way
I
we
don't
can
think there's a
find
lot.
out.
Not now. No, that's one of those things that's not on the. It's like the old. Saying, the revolution will not be televised. So yeah, that's the kind of thing that will happen that we won't hear about until after it's happened, or we'll start. Hey, I picked the Doms at our local monastery. Vigano and Bishop Schneider, reliable gardens of apostolic faith. Hooah! Yes.
Yeah, thanks for commenting.
Yeah.
I see this. I'm not going to read this comment out loud, but I'm going to say, I don't think
I like it.
some of the
I like it.
people
I think
would have
she's
a
right.
problem with it.
No. She's absolutely right. That's why we need deaconesses to fulfill
Yeah,
their early apostolic role. Perfect. Although it seems rather
yeah.
sexist,
Why
I
not?
think a guy can provide.
Why not go to the SSPX? Well, here's a problem.
Are they
How
around?
far do you have to drive to the SSPX?
Exactly.
I mean, if I had, if that was my closest Latin Mass parish, I'd be there.
Right.
It's hard. It's not the closest place in the world for a lot of people, and they're not going to expand. They're not going to double the size of the number of their masses just because there's a few people here and there that want masses. Unfortunately, they have to. Their priests are already stretched pretty thin. I mean,
Yes.
some of them even travel to two different locations on a Sunday. Some of them
Yeah,
drive hours.
yeah, and it's not like it's just like across town. No, they get on some of these guys. They get in a car, they go for hours. They get in a car, they go for hours again. Some of them get on a plane and get to go to a place, and then get in a car, and then yeah,
Yeah,
exactly right,
there's
exactly
yeah. I
right,
mean, it's
Rose.
same thing. I mean, wow. Nearest non-diocesan TLM.
Ooh,
Yeah, I
man.
mean, unfortunately,
Yeah.
that's what some
Yes.
people find themselves in, and we could rely on diocesan parishes up until just a few years ago. I mean, it was just like, oh, cool,
Yeah.
there's this diocesan Latin Mass, there's this one. I mean, we had a lot of options, and people even were a little bit more selective with Latin masses that they could go to. Like, okay, this
Absolutely
one's a little
true.
bit better,
Yep.
but now
Guilty as
it's
charged.
getting harder.
It is. It is. It's definitely more difficult. Yeah, and there are no good answers. It's just there will be an expansion of the fraternity and the institute, assuming the Vatican doesn't start messing with them. Like you're saying, Francis Unleashed, they could do that. Um, they could just they could make them all sit down and say, sign the paper that says, this is a valid mass, and I will provide these valid sacraments, and I won't. They could do that tomorrow to those people in the
Well, I
institute
mean,
and the fraternity. Will they?
would
I
it be
don't
so?
think so. But
Would it be so easy though? Because they
no,
already
no.
they already paid their homage to Vatican II. I mean, they already said like, oh yeah, it's a council and it existed and like, you know, oh,
Yes, but
thank.
they want to get rid. They say that poor person who's 5 hours from the non-diocesan TLM. Um, they want to make that everywhere. They want, there is, oh yeah, there's a Latin mass. It's way over there in 2 states from here. Um, or at the other end of this enormous state in the Midwest. That's what they want. So if they means they have to put pressure on the fraternity and the institute and other like-minded orders, then that's what they're going to do. I mean, they'll do it. I mean, we say, oh, they can't do this, they can't do that. It's going to be an issue. It's going to be a problem. Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean they can't do it and find effective ways to do it. And matter of fact, the whole 10 years of the Burgundian papacy has been about how they found ways to mess with people they don't like. If you don't believe me, ask the Franciscan Friars of the Immaculate, ask the Knights of Malta, ask the Carmelites in Philadelphia. There's all sorts of people getting stumped because they got in the way of the Francis. And I don't want to hear, it's he's a tough customer. He is so unlike Benedict. And I saw someone say, let's call Benedict the gentle pope. I think that's fair. I think he was a gentle man. And Francis is no gentle man. Francis, he was a bouncer. I mean, he was a soccer goalie and he was a bouncer. That's who he was. I mean, and as a bouncer, I think that's still who he is.
Yeah. Well,
he's a tough guy, and he will be in charge, and it doesn't matter. Look at this parade of perverts that he puts in positions of power because he can blackmail them. This is a fine way to run the railroad. We've got Father Rapenick, he is just the latest. We have Zanchetta and McCarrick, and who's our Camerlengo now? Farrell. He's a
Farrell,
man. That's now.
Yeah,
they're all there. They're all there, and they're there. Monsignor Rica, who runs the Casa Santa Marta. All of these pervs. Peña Pera, Maradiaga. He's a thief, literally. And there's a woman who wrote a book about how he stole $2 million from her family. She hasn't been thrown in jail for libel, has she? There's not even a case against her. So maybe it happened. He has some really, really nasty customers doing his bidding, and like I say, they are there because they're nasty customers, and they can be. And look who isn't a nasty customer, George Pell. And what happened to him? Oh, he found his way into an Australian jail cell somehow. Oh yeah, don't mess with the Francis. He's no Benedict.
Yeah, well, that's a lot to think about. You know what? The FSSP and the Institute, if Francis wants to shut him down, he doesn't have to go through the canonical process. I mean,
right.
Like, he wouldn't have to even dissolve the order. All you have to do is what Supich did. And then they become essentially a monastery.
Yep. Yeah,
a cloistered monastery with no public masses.
Yep. That's exactly right.
Will that happen? I think it's a fair question.
I don't think so. I think Francis is. I think he's going to move slower than you think he is, because he likes to move slow, because what happens, he doesn't want to startle people. He wants to boil the frog slowly, to use an overused meme. He tends to pull back when there's serious counter pressure. That's how he works. It's like, he goes forward. You push him back, he stays back, but he keeps pushing forward. As Pope Francis would say, time is greater than space, and that's how he rolls. He's just going to keep coming forward. Eventually, he'll get by. That's how he is. So, but as you say, he is on a time clock. He
Yeah.
does, he's got to get, he doesn't want to get things ready for Basungu or Zupi or whoever is going to be the next pope. Um, but we'll see.
Well, and I could easily be wrong because that synod has been extended for another year.
They did do that.
So
That was interesting because I think they're going to try to run once again. They're going to run things up. They're going to make people are going to scream and holler, and then they'll pay attention, and then they'll change that a little bit, and then push it all the way through it the second time. They'll say, "Oh, we addressed your concerns. Everybody's involved. It's going to be great. We're only going to have deaconettes on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays." Something like that. Be some compromise like that.
yeah, or maybe they're trying to get the numbers up a little bit. Less than 1% participated
Oh,
globally.
they don't care about the numbers. This is a matter of who can scream the loudest. And if you can't be heard, if you can't make a noise, then you will not be heard. That's how it is. I mean,
All
we
right.
know that. I mean, we're out here trying to make noise. It's like Horton Hears a Who. We are here. We are here. We are here. Did you ever see that, Dr. Seuss?
No.
Oh
yeah. This is cool. That's cool.
Yes,
I've heard of them, and
I've
they're not super near. They're not super close to me, but they are a Latin Mass order. There are a few of those around.
Yes, they're pretty
around
awesome.
The United States, and if you live near them, that's cool. Kind
It
of like
is.
the Fairfield Carmelites. You're actually probably not, Abigail. You're probably not super far from the Fairfield Carmelites then.
That's true.
Maybe like
She's
an hour
probably
or
not.
two.
Yeah.
The Carmelite nuns. By the way, they're getting a new bishop at some point.
Yeah, that's been very odd. For some reason, they're letting Gaynor stay in place.
Well, but I mean, he's reaching his 6 months at this point because August.
Mm-hmm.
I think August he turned 75, so they'll have a new bishop here in the new year. I would expect in the next month. If it's not this month, I would be surprised.
Yes,
and we'll see how much he can destroy that. There's an FSSP parish there as well,
right
in Harrisburg, and so the new bishop has a lot of places to crack down on.
Yeah, that's true. Dear.
So, okay. Well, do you have any closing thoughts, Brett?
Nope, I think I said everything I need to say, and probably some things I shouldn't have said. So it's all good.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's always great to have you on the show, and
thank you. It's fun to do.
I will, as sort of like a kind of a preview. I am going through Pope Benedict's booklet, Interview with Peter Seawald. It's the first book. He has some interesting thoughts, just kind of trying to get into the mind of Benedict. So I'm going to read some of those interesting segments whenever I finish it. So stay tuned for that.
Absolutely.
And pray for the soul of Benedict again. Don't canonize him. Pray for his soul. I mean, good things and bad things, but
exactly
at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because he's dead, and
he will be judged by the great judge himself, and perfect justice will be offered to him, as well as hopefully mercy. And we'll see. And hopefully we'll all get the same justice, and hopefully we'll all get some mercy, because you can't merit mercy. You just get it. So
yeah, and we need to take care of our own souls, and spending too much time worrying about what Francis is going to do next, that doesn't help. So do your spiritual reading. Lent is coming up pretty quickly. I mean, it's still Christmas season, but
yes, but Septuagesima is coming up soon. So yeah,
it is. Make this Lent a good Lent. Think about it now. New Year's resolutions, okay, whatever, but make that your Lent.
All right. So John,
thank you so much.
I want to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year,
and Happy Epiphany coming up.
Absolutely.
This has been the Thunder and Lightning Show. Thank you so much for watching. We are the laity.
And we will not be silent.